It's time for Twig. This week in Google, Mathew Ingram, Jeff Jarvis, and Steve Gibson join us as we talk about, well, it's not a Google story, but it's a story that affects everybody, including Google. The Department of Justice's demand, the court's demand that Apple decrypt a terrorist's iPhone. We'll also find out what Google has to say about it. That's next on Twig.
Netcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is Twig.
Bandwidth for This Week in Google is provided by Cachefly. CACHEFLY.com. Hi, everybody. It's time for our annual audience survey. We'd really like to hear from you. It helps us understand our audience better, know what you like and don't like, how you listen to the show. It also helps us tell advertisers what kind of people listen. But I promise you, your feedback is always kept personally anonymous. All you have to do is visit twit.tv/survey and let us know what you think. It'll just take a few minutes, and it'll help us make Twit even better. We really appreciate your support and any help you can give us. twit.tv/survey. This is Twig, This Week in Google, episode 340, recorded Wednesday, February 17th, 2016. Mr. Cook, decrypt this phone. This Week in Google is brought to you by Gazelle, the online marketplace for buying and selling used gadgets. Shop from a variety of certified pre-owned electronics or trade one in for cash. Give new life to a used device at gazelle.com today. And by FreshBooks, the super simple cloud accounting software that's giving thousands of freelancers and small businesses the tools to save time billing and get paid faster. Try it free at freshbooks.com/twig. And by Squarespace. Make your business and online store stand out with the only platform that lets you create, manage, and brand your store in a beautiful way. Enter the offer code TWIG to get 10% off. Squarespace. You should. It's time for Twig, This Week in Google, the home of Tuvan throat singing. Joining, and I'll have to explain that another time. Joining us right now from,
or you could just demonstrate.
Jeff Jarvis, the Tuvan throat singer. We've been talking about a new theme song, and I have found the perfect theme song, but nobody seems to agree with me anyway. Jeff is from the City University of New York, where he teaches journalism. He's also at the Tao Center, and he's also, of course, the author of many great books, including What Would Google Do?, Public Parts, Geeks Bearing Gifts, and blogs at buzzmachine.com. Joining us also, a former ink-stained wretch himself from the Globe and Mail, now and then Giga-Ohm, and now at Fortune, Mr. Mathew Ingram, who, by the way, is just getting better and better. I'm serious. I have been, I'll be reading a Fortune article and I'll go, oh, this must be Mathew. I'm not kidding. You have, I think, more than ever, you have found your voice and your niche, the place you should be, the stuff you're writing about. It sounds like you kind of can write about whatever you feel like.
More or less.
Yeah. You're a senior writer there. You focus on media and technology, so you're writing about the stuff that I read over and over again. But I just really enjoy your analysis and...
Thanks.
Yeah.
Please go on.
Well, the most recent one we talked a lot about last week, the Authors Guild, is still wrong about Google's book scanning. It was just... It was... if I'll use a writerly word, anodyne. It was, it just cut through all of the grease and the fat.
That's a great word. That is a great word.
Well, there's so much.
It's a $50 word.
Yeah, it's a $48.99. It's there's a lot of noise and stuff that makes it hard to kind of see right to the core of it. And this, boom, you nailed it. And it's like,
thanks.
What are you thinking, Margaret
Atwood? So you guys talked about that on the show? That must be why someone said, oh, are your ears burning? Yeah. Your name came up, and I wasn't sure what it was about.
Yeah, I can't remember if it was this show or Twit, but absolutely great.
And that one's been going on for so long. I remember writing about it, in 2005
is when it started. Jeez Louise. Yeah. But I thought, Denny Chin the judge was really exactly right. And we'll see what happens with this. I don't know.
Part of me actually wants it to go to the Supreme Court, even though I think it shouldn't. Like, there's no
reason.
But I would love to read the Supreme Court just definitively saying the things that Denny Chin said.
Yeah.
That the public benefits of this far outweigh, any copyright concern, and that's the whole point of copyright in the first place.
And what the Authors Guild
a revenue stream for authors.
And what the Authors Guild is doing is really taking it to the Supreme Court over fair use, over the definition of fair use, which is great because we need more clarifications.
We definitely do, yeah.
On what fair use is. It's not a law. It's just kind of a doctrine, and we need more clarification.
And there's the 4 factors, and so every time you bring it up, someone will say, "Well, what's fair use?" And then you just have to go into this long-winded.
Right.
You can't just say, "Oh, well, it's this."
It's like trying to explain encryption to people these days.
Yeah. All right, we got to do it. I know this is This Week in Google, but the biggest story of the week, the day, the week, the month, and probably the year broke this morning, and it's a blockbuster. Yep. Judge has ruled that Apple must, federal judge in Riverside, California, help the government unlock and decrypt an iPhone. This is, in particular, the iPhone 5C used by the man who shot up that did the terrorist attack in San Bernardino, shot up the party, the welfare office party. Apparently, when the FBI searched his apartment, they found his phone. The phone is locked, and as with all modern iPhones, encrypted. United States Magistrate Sherry Pym wrote that Apple must provide the FBI with a custom firmware that would allow them to brute force the passcode. This is what she wrote, Apple's reasonable technical assistance shall, this is a court order, accomplish the following 3 important functions. It will bypass or disable the auto erase function, whether or not it has been enabled. 2, it will enable the FBI to submit passcodes to the subject device. See, the problem right now with an iPhone is if you have a lock, and a 4-digit lock is all it is, and the modern iPhones are 6, but I think a 5C would probably be a 4-digit lock. You can't enter the codes fast. There's a delay, and if in some cases, it can be set up so that if you enter the wrong code 10 times, the whole thing is erased. The FBI, quite rightly, is saying, "Oh, we're not going to try to crack this thing because we don't want it to be erased." So 1, she wants them to bypass the auto erase. 2, she wants them to allow them to use software to try rapid fire all the codes. If it's 4 digits, there are only 10,000 codes. And 3, ensure that when the FBI submits passcodes, software running on the device will not purposely introduce any additional delay between attempts beyond what the hardware does. In other words, let them brute force it as quickly as possible.
Can I ask a few things here, for clarity first? Points of order. Number 1, unlocking the phone, obviously, is separate from de-encrypting the phone.
No.
No?
So here's the deal. All iPhones are encrypted. And, of course, if they're encrypted, you can't use them until they're decrypted. Entering the passcode decrypts it.
It does decrypt it from that point?
Yes. And so in other words, if you were able to get somebody's phone, grab it from their hands, you'd be, after they enter the passcode, you'd be able to use it and read everything. As soon as they shut it off or press just the turn off the screen button, then you need the passcode again, and it has now been re-encrypted.
Well, so all the data on the phone, every time you turn it off, is re-encrypted?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. And Apple, I mean, I forget when exactly this happened. Maybe you know, Leo, but Apple specifically did that.
iOS 8.
So that no one could get into your phone, including the government.
Here's the problem. Apple had a long waiting list of law enforcement officials who were asking them to decrypt phones, and at the time, or unlock phones. Sorry, not decrypt, unlock phones. And at the time, Apple had the technical means to do so. So they modified iOS with, I believe it was iOS 8, I'm almost positive, so that it, by default, encrypted phones, and Apple would no longer have the ability to decrypt because they didn't want to do it.
So then they can just say, we don't have the key.
Right.
Whereas before they would have to say, well, we don't want to do that, and here's why. Now it's just, we can't.
Well,
Except, right.
that they
The court
can,
is-
because the judge has written this order, and I've seen a number of experts. I'm not qualified to weigh in on this, but I've seen a number of experts write pieces that say, yeah, they could do this. And in fact, Tim Cook implies that. Here's the message Tim Cook posted this morning on Apple's site. The United States government has demanded that Apple take an unprecedented step which threatens the security of our customers. We oppose this order, which has implications far beyond the legal case at hand. This moment calls for public discussion. By the way, that's what we're going to do right now. And we want our customers and people around the country to understand what's at stake. The need for encryption. I'm going to read the whole thing, but I'll try to jump around a little bit because it's kind of long.
Yeah.
But the need for encryption, smartphones led by iPhone have become an essential part of our lives. People store a lot of stuff on them, including financial information, health data. All that information needs to be protected from hackers and criminals. Customers expect Apple and others to do everything in our power to protect their personal information. Compromising the security of our personal information could put our personal safety at risk. This is why encryption has become so important to all of us. We have even put the data out of our own reach, out of Apple's reach, because we believe the contents of iPhone are none of our business. Your iPhone, not our business. Okay, that's good. The San Bernardino case. We were shocked and outraged by the deadly act of terrorism in San Bernardino. We mourn the loss of life. We've worked to support the government. We have no sympathy for terrorists. When the FBI has requested data that's in our possession, we've provided it. Apple complies with valid subpoenas and search warrants. We've also made Apple engineers available to advise the FBI. We've offered our best ideas and a number of investigative options at their disposal. We have great respect for the FBI. But now the U.S. government has asked us for something we simply do not have and something we consider too dangerous to create. That's an important phrase.
That's the key of it all.
Mm-hmm.
We don't have it, but we could create it, is how I'm reading that.
So effectively, he's saying that Apple would have to create a customized version of iOS that would allow the things that the court order specifically mentions.
And apparently could put it on retroactively on this 5C. That's what puzzles me.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't get that either. But so then what Apple's saying, and I think what security experts are saying is once Apple creates that, it's not like it will just get destroyed. It will live somewhere. Someone could get their hands on it. That ability could become available to others, not just to the FBI.
And this is what Tim Cook says. The FBI may use different words to describe this tool, but make no mistake, building a version of iOS that bypasses security in this way would undeniably create a backdoor. And while government may argue that its use would be limited to this case, there's no way to guarantee such control.
Then that, ladies and gentlemen, is the key point.
Right.
I am going to say something you may surprise you. I think Apple has to and must and should do this. If Apple has the means to decrypt that phone, which they're, I think, admitting they do, not only are they required to by law, ethically and morally, they ought to do it. And
I know you play devil's advocate in these cases, but I don't think you're going to want to go on the record forever of asking for a permanent backdoor to encryption.
That's not what's being asked for, and that's, I think, disingenuous of Tim Cook to imply it.
They're not decrypting, though, right? They're going to set it up so that the FBI can brute force the password.
Exactly. And it's with a valid court order. Now, the question is, does Apple keep... By the way, this puts us in a no different situation than we were in just a year or two ago with iOS 7 and previous to iOS 8. It puts us in exactly the same position, and I would submit we were at no greater risk.
And Edward Snowden has told us that in the meantime. Let me ask one more point of order, Your Honor, or Chairman, or whatever you do in Robert's Rules of Order. What is it they could want out of that phone? Anything that was done in terms of phone calls, there's a separate record of the phone company. Anything done in terms of texts and any communications, there's separate records elsewhere that they can subpoena elsewhere. Now, if they
yeah, there's a good one. What if he went around taking pictures of the crime scene ahead of time?
Mm.
So what does that give them the case? The people are dead.
It's evidence.
Let me keep going for one more second. So you can get any communications elsewhere. If they sent encrypted email, that is a separate act of encryption, right? So this doesn't unlock that without that private key. And so what is it that they expect to get out of this? So this is a very important precedent being set around technology and around the safety of our technologies, especially knowing what we know now, thank you, Edward Snowden, about the NSA and DCHQ, and what we know about China and Iran and other countries. And so I would just suggest you weigh carefully the balance here to say that this is a huge and important precedent. For what end? The miscreants are dead. Are there others involved?
Well,
that would imply communication.
There are others involved. There is a man under arrest for providing them with the weapons.
I think it's
what is it they expect to get here?
They expect to get evidence that would convict this fellow of selling them or providing them with the weapons. Well, but that's the guy is facing trial for that, and they are quite reasonably saying the evidence may be on this phone, and we would like access to this phone. Let me ask you this, Jeff: would you suggest that if with a due warrant, police should not be allowed to search your premises, even in a locked box on your premises?
With a due warrant, fine. But if the way they got in that lockbox was a master key that could open any house and any box in any in the country,
see, that's the key. It's not just this case. It's not just this case. It's that Apple is being required to create a master key that could unlock any phone, not just this phone.
Bingo.
And so it's interesting. Ars Technica mentioned in their piece, which is quite good, that Apple has received multiple requests very similar to this one, like recently, and is probably going to get more. So it's not just this case. Whatever happens in this case is going to create a precedent that then makes it easier for other security agencies to do the same thing to other phones.
It's a couple of things. First of all, Apple has probably unwittingly revealed something that is kind of a shock to me, which is that this process apparently can be reversed, that they in fact have the capability of doing this. They're just in effect denying it to the government, but they have this capability, or they haven't yet written the tool, but they know how to do it. That's quite surprising. Normally their defense has been, we can't do it, we don't know how to do it, there is no way to do it. That's not what they're saying. They're saying we choose not to do it. A.
No.
B, there is a legitimate court order. It's the job of a federal judge to weigh these matters, not you or me. It's a job of a federal judge, and that's the Constitution of this country, and the rule of law in this country is that we let judges make this determination. That law enforcement comes to them and says, "This is, Your Honor, the case we're pursuing, and why we."
Is this reasonable search and seizure?
The judge has ruled that it is.
This is appealable as hell.
Well, it's appealable.
It will get appealed.
And if it goes to the Supreme Court and the Supreme Court agrees, would you then go along with it, Jeff?
At that point, there is no choice. Yes, but then that's the country that I'm afraid that Donald Trump is freaking running.
I disagree. I think that we have, of course, under the Bill of Rights, rights against unreasonable search and seizure, and those very specifically, the Bill of Rights sets a process for reasonable search and seizure. There is such a thing as reasonable search and seizure. There has to be due process. There has to be probable cause. And under those circumstances, there is currently a way to reasonably search your home, reasonably search your stuff.
Balance two coulds here, okay? One could that you said is there could be information on that phone that might involve one trial. Balance Mathew's could. This could be used by authorities, good and bad, and powers good and bad, to unlock every frigging iPhone in the world. Reasonable search and seizure, I would call that an unreasonable search and seizure because the impact on society is worse than this one case.
Yeah,
and that needs to be discussed and adjudicated.
If it was just unlocking this phone, I think we would all agree that it's in the interests of the courts and law enforcement and society in general to unlock this guy's phone.
Okay. Well, let's stop there. So you both agree that if we could just do it for this one phone,
and it did nothing else, if there were
it didn't put it into the air some ability to do this otherwise, you would be okay with it.
Some data that let Apple say, "Oh yes, we happen to have their code in their unencrypted email, and we'll give you whatever data you ask for about that person that's open, we'll give you." And if that helps you unlock that phone, dandy.
My fear is the FBI or the NSA or whoever is going to say to Apple, "Can we just have that thing that you made?"
No, but there's protections against that. That's why we have judges. That's why we have the Bill of Rights. But there are protections against that.
But there's protections against all kinds of things that happen routinely.
Well, I think we should take guns away from all police officers because
Leo, here's the issue. So this is Matthew's point. Fine, you've got your American judges, and they're wonderful, and we're exceptional, and we're special. We do nothing wrong. But once this capability exists, it will be the law of the land in China and Iran and Russia like that. That's the issue. This is worldwide. We can't act isolated that, oh, everything's okay here in the U.S. In this case, it's fine here. If that capability exists, every government that can will demand it under law.
I think it's unconscionable for a private company to decide on its own to defy the legal system in this country and say, no, we're not going to do it. I think that's unconscionable.
They're going to appeal.
And I think that cannot
that's
be allowed.
within their rights.
And at some point, if they were compelled to do so, or they,
yet.
well, let's say
this is the discussion we need, is because of these are implications that should be brought up, and the EFFs of the world and others of the world are going to be, friends of the court like crazy, smashing down the doors to say, wait, and understand the implications and the precedent of what you're doing here.
What I do want to separate from the conversation, though, is, a lot of this comes from this kind of mistrust of government because of Edward Snowden. I understand that. But that is not a legal. That is not a legal ground for defying the law. That is merely a mistrust of government. And as soon as we allow mistrust of government to run this country, then we have a much larger.
How do you think we got? How do we think we got the inability of government to do wiretaps without warrants? It was because of exactly a case like this, where they bugged a phone booth.
Should we stop all warrants?
We didn't trust government.
Should we stop all warrants? Shall we stop all wiretaps?
Oh, here's the limit. Well, the way the NSA has done, you bet your bloody bip we should.
Well, okay.
Yes, and we put limits on them, and that was the problem with warrantless wiretapping that was done by the NSA. Was exactly that. New laws were passed of which we have no awareness in a secret court that did this. This all goes to the definition of reasonable, Leo. Reasonable is going to be redefined.
And who's making the decision? We don't have access to FISA court rulings. We don't have access to what the criteria are. If they decide,
I'm not insensitive.
Apple should have this ability for every phone,
right?
And they convince Apple to give them the master key. We will never know.
Yeah, and I'm not insensitive to all of these allegations and the inappropriateness of the FISA court, and we should fight the FISA court. But that's a separate. In my opinion,
but they'll have this same tool then, Leo. The FISA court can come and say, now that exists, we will secretly ask for it for lots and lots and lots of phones, and you'll never know it. And therein lies the problem. It opens a Pandora's box. Right. Or should we put it? It decrypts Pandora's box.
Apple has 5 days to respond, and they haven't yet formally responded. They've written this open letter. I don't think that's the proper way to influence the judicial process, but they're certainly.
I'm sure they're doing things behind the scenes.
This is a public country.
I don't think.
It's exactly the right way.
But I think. Well, would you disagree? See, this is the thing that worries me. Would you disagree if Apple appeals and ends up in the Supreme Court? The Supreme Court rules the same way. Would you, at that point, then what would your position
I'll
be?
disagree to my heart's content. But when Steve Cook says I'm not going to jail, I'll follow the law. I'll understand fully what he's doing. I'll just hate it.
Right.
That's what it is. Yes, but. Knowing what we know now about how our government has behaved, knowing what we know now about secret courts, thank you, Edward Snowden, knowing what we know now about the differences in technology and the precedent that can be set here, because we're trying to make analogs to the real world. Oh, there's going to be a single skeleton key that gets into every lock in the world.
Now,
that's impractical.
Let me give you an additional fact and see what you say. Apple says the only reason we can do this is because it's an old phone. It's iOS 7. Were this iOS 8 or 9, you could ask all you want. We couldn't do it. Yeah, the only reason we can do this is because it's iOS 7. Now,
is that what they're saying?
Yep.
That is what they're saying. So that is the case?
No, Apple's not saying anything. That is the case.
I see. That is the case. This is an iOS 7 phone.
Apple actually did say this in a filing with the judge, that it's impossible to do this for iOS 8 or 9, but it only can do this because this is an old phone running iOS 7. That's only 10% of the current phones out there. Now, what do you say?
So I guess all the terrorists are going to upgrade pretty quickly.
These were dumb terrorists, for damn sure. My concern remains the larger precedent that is set here, that if a capability opens up to ruin encryption, can the government enforce us to do that? That would concern me at any level.
I have to say, I'm also concerned.
Does Apple have any particular secret sauce here that the NSA and its geniuses don't have on their own? or the CIA or the FBI or any of those places. Is what they're why? Let me just ask this: what does Apple know? Are they going to just brute force it themselves? What is it that they can do? Do we think?
No. Apple. So the court order specifically asks Apple to make it easier for the FBI to brute force the password.
So explain that to me, Lucy.
To remove the restrictions. So if you type the password or unlock code too quickly, certain things happen.
So if you repeat it,
so basically, right, you repeat it too many times, you do it too quickly. So the order would force Apple to remove those restrictions, not to unlock it, just to make it easier for the FBI to do it. Because if they had to brute force it through the chip
to fight,
or something like that, it would take 15 years.
Okay, so then to play devil's advocate with the devil Leo for a second, then Apple's not de-encrypting the phone. Apple is enabling them to do so.
Right.
By just making it easier.
Well, Apple's software will de-encrypt it. It's allowing them to brute force the lock.
Right.
Yeah.
And it is interesting that this would not apply to every phone.
What if there were a lockbox in your house that had a very strong and known to be very difficult to break lock, but the law enforcement needed to get in that lockbox and subpoenaed the lock maker to help them crack the lock? How would you feel about that? Now they have a search warrant.
In the end,
they have the right to see this.
In the end,
it's locked, technically locked.
Yeah. Do
would it
we in
apply
the
to only
end
that
have
lock?
any right to privacy? Can we go walking in the woods?
I don't think that is the larger question, truthfully. I think there's actually a very large question, and it worries me considerably, which is that we have a rule of law. Now, I think that it's very much complicated by the international points you brought up.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I'm going to table that momentarily. But I feel that we have a rule of law in this country that is the probably one of the few things that distinguishes us from any other country, or except Canada. I love Canada. No, many other
Canada
countries.
Doesn't trust us.
Many other countries. That rule of law is absolutely critical, I believe, to the success and survival of a nation. I've been in nations, many of them, where the rule of law is corrupted or damaged. I'll never forget going to Egypt, and the corruption that occurred in Egypt basically makes society crumble. And so I think it's so important that we not disregard the value of living in a society ruled by laws. And very often the law does something that an individual doesn't like, right? And in fact, everything we're talking about here is, you could say, well, that's a violation of our constitutional rights to privacy. We don't have a constitutional right to privacy, but we have implicit rights. That's right. And so you could say, the government is overreaching, and we need to. That's against the rule of law. I think you got to be very, very careful about assailing the rule of law. That's the only thing that protects us from the government.
No, I'm not assailing the rule of law. I'm saying what Apple's saying is there needs to be a full discussion about this, and not just to answer this judge like that. We've got to see this to the limits. This is a big deal. So pardon me for what I'm about to do. At Davos, I sat in on a panel on whether your brain will declare you guilty, and where we are in the ability.
The Minority Report, pre-crime kind of.
Yeah, or post, right. That your brain isn't encrypted. Right? There's a precedent that goes even there that is concerning, and there is a question of. We don't have a constitutional right to privacy. What we have is a constitutional right to no unreasonable search and seizure, and unwarranted as well. And we have to be wary, I think, here of setting precedents going forward for new realms of technology. And that's why as I said, I don't want to do the skeleton key argument.
What if Apple?
Because
let me. Steve Gibson's in the chat room. We've had this conversation. In fact, if you want to try to get Steve on the line, please do. We've had this conversation with Steve before. Steve said something quite shocked me, which is that Apple, and actually I am now agreeing with him. Apple should probably go back to the day when they could decrypt. They didn't encrypt by default because of this. It should be searchable with a warrant in the way that your home is searchable with a warrant. Steve is saying, and I don't know what he's basing this on, but he says, One, Apple uses their secret code signing key to sign an update that will only operate with that one phone.
Oh.
Two, and I think this is actually technically exactly what would happen, and certainly Steve would know better than I. Two, the updated iOS has weakened protections. They've weakened it, which then allows brute forcing of the passcode, and that's what the law enforcement is asking them to do. And I
think if it was just for that phone,
it is just for that phone. Now,
so this
what Tim Cook
says,
says is you've let the genie out of the bottle because we've now written the code to do that. We now have the capability. So law enforcement's going to keep coming to us with subpoenas and warrants saying you've got to do it with this phone.
In China, it'll be in every phone. It'll be required by law to be in every phone.
No, it won't, because Apple has it.
No, they'll be required by law to put it in every phone.
It will get out.
That
No.
capability.
Apple has to do it one at a time. So that's not to say Chinese authorities won't send a phone to Apple and say decrypt it. That's what they used to do, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
So this is possible.
That's
that it could
exactly
only be
Apple
done
did
for that
this.
phone.
Yes, I believe that Steve. I believe that Steve is correct. That technically sounds, and Steve has looked very much into the security of those phones.
Well, then that would remove my main problem, which is that it would somehow become something that government could use at its
Matthew,
will on any
don't give
phone.
up on me yet. Don't desert me yet, Matthew. Don't leave me alone here.
Sorry.
What about the international argument, Matthew? That once Apple has proven this capability and demonstrated that they will offer it, then China, Iran, Russia
will all petition them
again and again and again.
And Apple will,
and then Apple can just drag its feet. And
that's exactly what's been. By the way, that's how it was pre-iOS 8. That's exactly how it was. Right. All the court is saying is, let's go back. This is a pre-iOS 8 phone. We ask you to do the same thing you used to do with those phones for this phone. Apple's already said, and I think this is true, that since one of the reasons they did it, and it almost feels like a convenience argument. Apple just didn't want to. There was a long line of law enforcement saying, please decrypt this phone. And Apple was doing it one by one.
Well, let's also remember back to Yahoo and China, where a man went to jail for a decade because Yahoo had to follow the law of the land and hand over information about him. And no, Apple doesn't want to be in that position. Google doesn't want to be in that position.
Well, I understand, but you're doing business in that country.
Well, and that's why they don't want to set this precedent.
But wait a minute.
Use America as the standard.
That's highly hypocritical. To say, I tell people when they go to China, people say, well, how do I get around the Great Firewall of China? I said, you shouldn't. You're a guest of the country. You should adhere to the laws of the country, just as I would expect a Chinese citizen. Well, but that's the problem, right? Google and Yahoo want to make money in China, but they don't want to adhere to the laws of China.
Well, by that logic, Leo, then nothing should be encrypted. Then encryption can be made illegal.
Or you don't do business in those countries.
Or you just make it, no.
But the theory, the theory for Google and Apple, certainly for Google, and I think Facebook, is that being in that country helps you push against those
I'm going to work I'm going to work with the establishment to change.
There's got to be right. Well, and maybe they should just pull up and not do any business in those countries. But that doesn't seem realistic.
It's not realistic because they're profit-making entities. So there's a little hypocritical stuff going on here. Well, we don't want to follow the laws of the country, but we'd like to make the money of the country. I think that's a problem ethically. And I think.
What if the laws are wrong?
Well, what if somebody, let's say, a jihadist from the Middle East comes to the United States and says, I think the laws of the United States are wrong, and I'm going to do what I want to do, and it might be blow up Americans.
What if Apple is doing business in Saudi Arabia and one of their employees, does something that requires them to be beheaded in the public square? Should Apple just say, okay?
Let's take a break because Steve Gibson is prepared to join us. I'm really thrilled to have that.
That's great.
This is such a good conversation, and I'm really glad we got the smartest minds on this right now. And this is exactly, I'm sure, what Tim Cook intended with his open letter published this morning. And absolutely, Apple's going to appeal it. And if SCOTUS takes it, then I'm sure we'll hear from.
Well, that gets us into the other fight going on in this country right now.
That's why that's so important, by the way, isn't it?
But they should appeal it. They should appeal it.
They should appeal it.
It needs to be tested.
It should be tested up to the highest court in the land.
Exactly.
And then if the highest court in the land rules we have agreed as a society, and this is the only way our society can continue to adhere to that law.
Just got a little breaking news here, but we'll do the commercial first.
Oh, all right. Steve Gibson and breaking news coming up. As with all our sponsors, I tell you about companies that are very useful, good for you to know. Gazelle is a great one. Gazelle is the trusted online marketplace for selling your old stuff so you can get some cash, your old phone, your old tablet, your old computer. And then, now this is something new they've added, buying a gently pre-owned device from Gazelle for buying or for selling, GAZELLE.com. They have a variety of iPhones for sale, including the 6S, the 6S Plus, the other new stuff, iPads, Samsung Galaxy phones. Each device fully inspected, backed by a 30-day return policy and sold without carrier contract. But they do work on all the major carriers, which is really, really nice. And the price, you get to choose the condition of the phone. In every case, they're fully functional. They don't have big scratches in the glass or anything. And it all works. But, some have gentle signs of wear, some don't. So you get to choose and you pay accordingly. So if you really want to save, you're replacing a broken phone, and you just want to get through the rest of the year till the new iPhone 7 comes out, let's say, or it's for a kid and you don't want to spend a lot of money because they're going to break it again, Gazelle's a great choice. They now, this is brand new, provide financing on anything you buy from a firm. And it's very easy. You just provide basic information. You'll get instantly approved on the site, and you could pay over 3, 6, or 12 months. Easy monthly payments. In fact, they'll do it through a bank transfer, a check, or a credit card. Just select financing with a firm at checkout. Actually, I think it's a debit card. No, it's check, debit card, or bank transfer. Gazelle offers a 12-month warranty for cell phones and iPads powered by Assurance Solutions. So they're partnering up with some really, really great companies. Insurance from Assurant covers water damage, cracked screens, hardware defects, and more. And help is available, of course, 24/7 from Gazelle to process claims and return your device fast. Get a new one fast, too. Don't miss out on getting the best value in certified pre-owned devices. Now it's easy at Gazelle.com. Give new life to used electronics. Trade it in for cash or buy certified pre-owned. Even get financing and insurance at Gazelle.com today. Gazelle.com. Steve Gibson joins us. I'm glad you were listening, Steve.
Yeah, I had some time, and I figured I'd put you guys on in the background. And I always love listening to This Week in Google. I'm great to be on with Jeff because I often concur with his sort of extreme views.
But except this case, you're going to say, Steve?
Well, I don't know. See, Steve, what I love about Steve is a great thinker, and he's never dogmatic about this stuff. So what do you think? First of all, what you said in the chat room, is that accurate, Steve? Is that...
Yeah, what I wanted to do was, if nothing else, in order to have a discussion, we need to know, we need the right technology base, and then I think separate the policy from the technology, because they're really separate things. So what we absolutely know, and we've talked about this a number of times in the past, and this has been true for quite a while, is that individual iOS updates are per phone. I remember clearly going over this at some point when that one podcast we did I think actually it was several podcasts where we really took apart Apple's current security model. And I think it was with iOS 7. It was the big white paper that they did then. And what I remember is that every phone is unique in, for whatever, we'll call it it's got its own key or its own serial number. And so in order for an iOS update to be accepted, it must be signed by Apple and using Apple's secret code signing key for iOS and be per phone. And this was an important security measure that prevents other older iOSs from being installed on a different phone, which would create a downgrade attack on iOS and then allow things that have been previously fixed to reappear. So Apple has a lot of control over what the phones get. And I have also been following this story this morning, reading the various back and forths. And so as I understand it, what that what the court is ordering Apple to do is to weaken the safeguards which are in place to prevent brute forcing. There's an 80 millisecond delay. And also some of this is from Mathew Green. He also posted about this, where in 14, 2 years ago, he took a strong look at exactly this aspect of the iPhone. And so the idea is they remove any software imposed delay between guesses, which they're able to remove in order to increase the rate at which they can brute force. And they disable the 10 hits or 10 misses, and the key gets wiped out, thus preventing the phone from being ever decrypted. And so the idea is that, and there's something called, the acronym is, I think, DRU. I can't remember what it stands for, but that's
DFU.
A DFU, right?
Yeah.
That's the ability to
it's
update
not a joke.
Okay,
it's the real name.
Not an FU. Not an FU.
It's the ability to update the phone through an attached USB connection, which is one of the router's best tricks. And so the idea is that the FBI would physically and would need to physically present the phone to Apple and say, here's the phone we need you to make it possible for us to brute force. So Apple would then modify an iOS, which it would sign for that phone and then install in that phone. And then the one other thing they're asking for is to have electronic access to input passwords so that some poor FBI intern isn't sitting there going 0000, 0001, and so forth. So I think that's where we are. So, but other than that,
so in other words, this would not be kind of a global backdoor.
Right. So this could just be one phone. This could just apply to that phone.
However, it would be an admission by Apple that they have this technology. Although this is, I suspect, what they've been doing all along up to iOS 8.
But would the phone physically, would any future phone have to physically be presented to them to do this?
Yeah, and it'd have to be running an older version of the operating system, right? Steve, you can't do this retroactive firmware update on iOS 8. I don't think so.
I don't know.
I don't know either, but I believe that Apple's intent with iOS 8 was to prevent this from ever coming up. And the only reason, according to Ars Technica, the reason this comes up now is because it's an iOS 7 phone. It's an older phone.
Right.
Let me, thank you to Gadget Hog for providing a great quote from a surprising source. This was a decision in 1987 by the U.S. Supreme Court, 6-3, in ruling for the police officers who were legally searching an apartment for weapons. Remember, they're looking for weapons, violated the Fourth Amendment, the Bill of Rights Amendment that prevents unlawful search and seizure, unreasonable search and seizure, violated the Fourth Amendment when they slightly moved stereo equipment to check the serial numbers to see if they were stolen. Remember, they were looking, and the search warrant said looking for weapons, but they end up moving, and that was thrown out of court. Justice Antonin Scalia wrote in the opinion, and it's a great quote, "There's nothing new in the realization that the Constitution sometimes insulates the criminality of a few in order to protect the privacy of us all." And there you go.
There are some stereo systems that could qualify as a weapon.
Well, it really
threw them at someone.
It really is interesting, and this is about probable cause and about the Fourth Amendment. But it shows you that first of all, this was Justice Rehnquist's Supreme Court, and Scalia, a staunch conservative who was thought to support Rehnquist. But it's interesting because this is why the Supreme Court is the Supreme Court. They did, in fact, constrain police powers in a search. You can't just kind of go on a fishing expedition. But that also encourages me that if the judge and ultimately if the Supreme Court says, no, we want you to decrypt this phone, that means there is good probable cause. The police have presented a good probable cause that there's something on that phone that will be of value.
Jeff?
I have to say one. Yeah. Oh, go ahead.
Jeff, do you think at this point that where we are in time, given how far we are post Snowden and the Patriot Act, and sort of feel that this general feeling that maybe there was some overreach, that the country as a whole has learned its lesson, and that, or do we just have to mistrust government and give them as little power as possible?
As always, Steve, I expect the best questions from you, and I won't have answers for you the way you have answers for us. I'm so delighted you're here. I'm so happy you're here. I think a few things. One is that if you were sitting on the Supreme Court, what you have to do is not, as you just said, Steve, you have to separate the technology from the policy and from the law in this case, and not worry about the limitations that happen to be on this particular phone, on this particular OS. You have to be saying that an ability was demanded of a technology company involving privacy, and no matter what the technology is in the future, we can demand the same thing. And with new technologies, new capabilities, new issues, you get wildly fast computers that can brute force in different ways. What does it matter then? So the fact that Apple put on things to protect all of us so that any garden variety crook and criminal and miscreant couldn't do our phones, when asked to take that off under the nation's law, whatever the nation is, that's what we have to be concerned about. And we have to somehow rise to the level of principle here. I've said on the show a couple times that the law around our protection of privacy in our mails was miswritten to a technology. It was written to the technology of the U.S. Postal Service and a physical letter. The law should have been written to the principle to say that our private communications are presumed private unless sought under a lawful warrant, yada, yada, yada. That's why our mail is still protected, but our emails and our chats and our phones are not. So the larger question I need to ask first is, what's the principle? Then you're right, Steve. The next question is, has the country learned given the lessons of Snowden? And I think so. And I think that the trust that we have in this country is tarnished because of the NSA and GCHQ, but that's kind of irrelevant in this case because I worry about the lowest common denominator. For an international company like Apple and Google and Facebook, I have to worry about the lowest common denominator of freedom around the world because that's the one we'll live under henceforth. If China can do it, it doesn't matter whether the U.S. law is better. It might as well happen here. And so we have to look at the precedent at a level of principle and internationally. And that's hard, but I think I want to see that high and hard test as, God help me, agreeing with Scalia, he gets last laughs that we liberals will have to agree with him on that. But I think that's the case. I'm not a libertarian. I keep on, making clear I'm a Hillary Clinton Democrat, full disclosure here. But yes, I think you're right, Steve, or I think your question is right, that we can't just hand over too much power in this realm to government, especially when we know, as Mathew was saying earlier, that we have secret courts. We got to worry about that. What do you?
I disagree, though. I think you're over globalizing this. For instance, if Apple demonstrates this capability, and by the way, as we now know, it's a very constrained capability that doesn't apply to 90% of the new phones and none of the new phones. It doesn't mean that all of a sudden you have to do whatever China says. You still, they would. I think you could fight that in many ways.
Leo, I'm making your argument. I'm making your argument.
And it doesn't.
That's the law of the land in China.
But it doesn't change the law of the land in the United States. You still need a probable cause and due process to get that phone.
It changes the security of this technology and the trust in this technology around the world.
Steve,
and
where
the
do you
law of the land
stand?
In China is the law of the dictator.
If it is just this,
I want to hear Steve.
So, what
well, here's my question to you, Steve. We had talked a couple of weeks ago on Security Now, and you said something very surprising, which actually, as I thought about it, was very sensible, which is that Apple should just go back to the way it used to be, which is that encryption was not on by default because it was using new technological capabilities to cause a problem with law enforcement. Do you still feel that way?
So the position I took was that we have the technology to create in our phone this a reasonably secure lock and as I understand the Constitution far less well than Jeff does, but, as a citizen of the U.S., there's this notion that, my home is my sanctuary and domain, and I have a key to the front door, and it is illegal for anyone to come in without my permission, except in the case that the Constitution provides for there being reasonable suspicion and, so forth. And so where I came down on this, on like exactly where we are in the middle of this really interesting question about, given that we now have the technology for unbreakable encryption, are we going to create exceptions to that? And we have exceptions that we've been living under where duly authorized law enforcement can enter a facility if it has reasonable cause for doing so. If a judge looking at the evidence says, yes, we're going to give you access. And so my point was there's a technical way, not a back door, not a way that weakens anything, which I described on the podcast, which is every single phone has a unique, randomly generated key which Apple stores. So it's not an algorithm that can get loose. It's not something that China can discover. It's not something that can be reverse engineered. There is no linkage between the phone and the key, except that they were created together, and Apple has a vault where they store it. And that, without weakening anyone's encryption, anyone's phone in any way, it does allow Apple to respond to an order to make one specific phone unlockable. And in discussing this in subsequent weeks, I added the additional criteria. Again, it's technology. We can make it work however we want to. It could be designed so that Apple must physically have the phone and have the disassociated key, which together then allows the unlocking.
Steve, is that true in 7 and 8 and beyond, or just 7?
No, I'm just making up a technology.
Oh, I see. Okay.
I was sort
this
of
is what they could do.
Yes, I was exploring the idea of giving Apple the ability to safely respond to a court order, and saying that, as much as possible, this mimics the existing powers that the state has for conducting searches and seizures.
And I think that's the key, Steve, is that we were talking before you came on about how one of the risks that we were afraid of and others are afraid of is that this ability could basically escape into the wild and be used on any phone. So if it was restricted in some way so that it would only work on this one phone, and then the next time the FBI or somebody wanted to do it, they would have to get another order, and then Apple would have to do it for another phone and would have to physically have it, then that would calm my fears to some extent about this master key escaping that would somehow be used by law enforcement or who knows who.
It's interesting because that's exactly how the debate is starting to take shape. Apple, Tim Cook in his open letter said it was creating a back door. The White House has now issued a statement. Josh Earnest, talking with reporters, said it's important to recognize the government is not asking Apple to redesign its product or, quote, create a new back door to its products. This is about one phone and one case and a one-off.
It is asking
decryption.
Apple to take an action here that it built into the phone that we all bought. We all bought with the presumption this couldn't be done.
No,
so there was a contract.
No. That 5C was sold before this was possible. Apple did not routinely encrypt.
Let me explain.
Okay.
The notion that you can change the time delay on trying.
Okay.
We bought the phone in a contract that said this phone is equipped with this.
I didn't even know that, to be honest.
Some people did.
Some people did, right? So we're asking to change it. Let me ask this question at the principal level. Do you as a citizen have the right to encrypt your communications? Full stop, simple question.
Absolutely.
Yes or no?
Absolutely.
Sure.
Well, then you've just violated kind of everything that you're saying.
No, that's not what this argument is about. If Apple
government
has
has the
a
right to
means to
decrypt them.
decrypt it, and the
you don't
government
have the right
demands
to
that they
encrypt.
do so, Apple has no choice.
And you don't have the right to encrypt.
You do.
Then encryption would be, that's the
In the
point.
same way
That's
you
No,
have
if
the
I
right to
use
lock your
PGP,
house.
no, if I use PGP, which I do routinely, and no one can decrypt it, that's done. There's not even a question. There's no court ruling and no mandate, no warrant. It can't be done. That's, by the way, why Apple changed iOS, because they didn't want to be in the position to be able to do this. This is not about going forward or current iOSs. This is about an old iOS, 10% of the iPhones.
Actually, Wired says it was running iOS 9.
Oh, that's interesting. Because ours
According-
ours says it's 7.
It says
And
in
if it
the
is
court
9
order.
and they think they can do it,
It
Well,
says in
then-
the court
and that
order
was-
it was running iOS 9.
That was the thing I found interesting, is Apple effectively admitting that they had the ability to do it, which I was shocked to read. Or are you surprised? I don't know what to say at this point. Maybe Wired got it wrong. I don't know. I'd like to see the filing. Let's see the
It's in the
Remember that-
PDF.
Okay.
Remember that there are sort of degrees of encryption. We've talked about, for example, iMessage, where the way iMessage works is that Apple has a key server, and when you send a message to someone else, Apple sends you or a group sends you the public keys which match each of the recipients of the message that you're sending, and the message is encrypted individually such that it can only be decrypted by the other person's private key, which has never left their phone. So in principle, that sounds wonderful. That means that, nobody can decrypt these messages except the recipient, except that Apple runs the key server, and
Right.
nothing prevents them from including an additional key, which they have the private key to, or the FBI has the private key to. So again, we need to separate policy from technology, which is why I think this is, such an interesting discussion, and why 2016 is going to be such a fascinating year, because we have something in encryption, in math, which is absolute. And there are, I argue, ways to compromise such that we keep the strength we want while adding additional privileges if we choose to. And so we have to decide now if we choose to. And I mean, Jeff's point is right. Either we have a right to encrypt or we don't, or maybe somewhere in between.
We're going to wrap it up, and if you want to stick around, Steve, you're welcome to. If you want to get going, I know your server's still down.
oh no.
He's being DDoSed. He's been DDoSed for a few
we had
days
15
now.
minutes of uptime between 10:45 and 11 this morning.
Oh, that's probably because he went to school. First period is always bad for DDoS attacks, but
Is it a
usually,
DDoS for? Is it for
I'm
real?
going to take
Yeah.
off. It's been a pleasure.
thank you, Steve.
Steve, thank
Thanks,
you,
Steve.
thank you. Always a pleasure.
GRC.com if you can get there.
Yeah, I tried actually, and it just said connect.
Yeah, he's been DDoS, 13 gigabit attack.
Oh, no.
Massive. By the way, Steve will be back, and we will probably discuss something around these topics
Steve is the best.
on
He is excellent.
Tuesday for Security Now at right about this time.
I can't find in the court order I can't find where it says iOS 9.
Yeah.
So that's according to Wired.
Ultimately, though, and we did not cover this as much as it deserved to get covered, and I really want to point people to the Harvard Berkman Center's excellent discussion of all of these topics. It came out a few weeks ago. It's called Don't Panic. If you Google Don't Panic and Harvard or Berkman Center, you'll find the PDF. Making progress on the Going Dark debate. And the people brought together for this were amazing. The conveners were Matt Olson, Bruce Schneier, and Jonathan Zittrain, all three really very well known in the security field. And they brought together some of the best security people to talk about it. It's hard to bottom line it because there's so much going on in here. But essentially, they said, don't panic. First of all, encryption is absolutely vital for national security as well as individual privacy. But law enforcement has plenty of other ways to surveil you. And in fact, with the advent of the Internet of Things and widespread Internet access, there's no issue that government has more information than ever about bad actors. And so it's not unreasonable to say, let's preserve the privacy we've had. And we have. And, of course, and they even call it the catalyst. Apple, Google, and others introduce easy-to-use built-in encryption. And that's really why this debate is happening, is because Apple made encryption a consumer product, where in the past it's only been available to the highly technical users. Remember when Edward Snowden first wanted to reveal the contents of the treasure trove from the NSA, he wanted to use PGP with the reporter, and he said, what's PGP? I had no idea how to implement it. But now, thanks to these companies, it's really interesting. There is a statement in here from Jonathan Zittrain. I'm down in the appendix if I can get to it. In the appendix, each of the signatories, and there are quite a few, gets a chance to say their own thing. Bruce Schneier is, of course, a personal hero, and he says ubiquitous encryption protects us much more from bulk surveillance than from targeted surveillance. For a variety of technical reasons, computer security is extraordinarily weak, and this guy knows. If a sufficiently skilled, funded, and motivated attacker wants in your computer, they're in.
Yeah.
If they're not, it's because you're not high enough on their priority list to bother with. Widespread encryption forces the listener, whether a foreign government, criminal, or terrorist, to target. And this hurts repressive governments much more than it hurts terrorists and criminals. And then
that's a great point.
Isn't
Targeting,
it? It's really about bulk collection.
Exactly. The bulk sort of mass net sucking in everything as opposed to targeting specific individuals.
Yeah. And then Jonathan writes, I empathize, and this is to what Steve was saying, I empathize with the idea that just how much government can learn about us should not depend on the cat and mouse game of technological measure and countermeasure. Ideally, this is what I was saying, a polity would carefully calibrate its legal authorities to permit access exactly and only where it comports with the imperatives of legitimate security. In other words, where there's a real security reason, and with basic human rights as recognized through the protections of conventions and constitutions. It's a very challenging argument.
Absolutely.
And it's clear when you read the white paper that there wasn't total agreement among all the parties, but boy, one thing they do agree about is surveillance. Bulk surveillance is easier than ever. And encryption does not force law enforcement to go dark by any means.
Just to go back to the point about iOS 9, it's so NPR, Washington Post, Wired, and a couple other sites all said it's running iOS 9.
Okay.
Of course, they could all be reading off the same exact source, which is what we do in our business, so you don't know.
As we know, that does happen.
I don't know what
they
you're saying.
copy each other.
I don't know what you're saying. That never happens.
Never happens.
Leo, I'm looking at the document right now, and one interesting piece of notice is it wasn't his phone. It belonged to the state.
Right.
Oh, well, that's right. It was a phone provided to him by his employer.
It was a work phone.
Right.
So there's
That
no
changes
question.
things.
It does significantly because his employer has given permission for the phone's contents to be read. And since it's their phone, they're the
Right. He has no
responsible
rights to
party. They have the rights to say you can look at it.
Yeah.
It's only technological methods that are preventing them from looking at it.
And it does say that it did receive the last update.
Okay.
So.
Okay. That would be iOS 9 in all likelihood.
I also read in one of the other.
There's no secure enclave, however, on the 5C.
They have multiple backups of this phone already. So they have
that's
backups
interesting.
that I guess the phone did. Yeah.
Okay.
I haven't.
But hold on one second. At the beginning of the conversation, you said 8 and 9. It's all moot because it can't happen anyway. So does this mean that the government, once they can brute force, has more capability to brute force this than we know? No.
So the biggest difference is hardware difference. Subsequent iPhones have Touch ID and what's something called a secure enclave,
which is on the chip, right?
Yeah. And as far as we know, there's no government backdoor or ability to crack it. And I have
as far as we know.
Well, but I have to believe that with Apple taking this strong stand today, that's probably the case. They seem pretty principled. Tim Cook seems pretty principled in his argument against this.
So, I admire Snowden and what he did. But I think, and tell me if I'm wrong here, he on a tweet, he basically said, Google's silence proves that they're on the wrong side, they're on the other side. This has been a couple hours.
Yeah, give Google
this
a
requires
chance.
lots of lawyers. Google has fought around encryption like crazy. Google's a victim of the NSA, was enraged when they heard what was happening. I think it's a little unfair at this stage. Now, obviously, I'm a Google defender all the time, blah, 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 but all I'm trying to say is...
encrypted?
No, I'm going to say something else first.
Nexus phones are encrypted, yes.
They are, okay.
Yes,
Since the Nexus 6, they've been encrypted.
Okay. And I'm first asking, basically, with their public stand here vis-a-vis Apple, this takes time to go through a bureaucracy and lawyers and all that, and they got all kinds of implications. So if Google comes out with a statement saying, screw Apple, I will be critical of Google, but I think it's just a little too soon to condemn Google on this case. I did email them and I said, what is your stand? I haven't heard back yet. I don't expect to right away. But I do think that for other technology companies, yes, we'll wait and watch. I don't know what the proper amount of time is, but do you agree that it's a little soon?
A little bit.
Yeah. We'll hear from Google, I'm sure.
I think so.
That's the Twitter. That's the Twitter talking, not Edward Snowden. That's the Twitter talking.
Snowden tweeted a link to a New York Times story, which says the Chinese government is going to be watching very closely, and that if law enforcement agencies push Apple to unlock the phone, it would embolden Beijing to demand the same. And
I totally agree with you, Jeff, that's the real concern is that once they show this capability, then it's a free-for-all with every country. But it's kind of a cheesy way to
okay, but let me rise up. Let me
that.
rise up into the clouds and low oxygen, which is what I specialize in here. So fine, but I would argue that we're at a point now where we're questioning the very institution of government, and that's what we see happening in our election right now. It's what we see happening around the world, and technology has to decide and live on its principles as well. And we as technology users have to expect technology companies to do that and to fight for us because they do hold this power one way or the other. And we've got to know what their principles are. And so that to me is is that extra governmental? Yes. So is life. So is being able to talk to your priest and not have that revealed to government. That the church came up with its principle and lives by its principle, and psychiatrists came up with their principle and live by their principle.
But they were enshrined in law. Very important.
Well, but yes, and Google.
I mean, I could decide that I am, as if you tell me things because I am a chief twit, that it is protected under the twit confidentiality agreement.
That's the discussion we ultimately have to have.
But government has to then enshrine it in law before it's the law of the land.
That's the discussion we have to have, and that's the precedent that a court will eventually set in this discussion to say that when you entrust to a technology company your security, and that can be so easily violated, then we have forced an entire industry to not be trustworthy anymore. And the technology companies have to decide what their stand is as to what will they do to fight for us. And that's where Snowden's right, and that's where the issue is right now. And so in a sense, I would argue in a time when I think government institutions are going to be challenged all around the world, I'm not suggesting now that Google is the new government. Google doesn't want that job. But the technology industry, because it is so international, because we depend upon it in all these ways, it's going to have to stand up to almost quasi-legal questions of principle. Quoting Loris Lessig, code is law.
Yeah.
And that's where we are right now. And that's why this discussion is so important. And that's why you can't just quickly say, oh, judge said it. Okay, sorry, guys, we got to do that. I salute Cook for saying this is a much bigger discussion, and damn it, we're going to have it.
And I think the other thing that troubles me, at least, is that I get the feeling, and I don't know this, but I get the feeling that the FBI and other security agencies have been working on trying to get into iPhones on their own.
Yeah.
They clearly want to set some kind of precedent. That's why they're doing this. So they want to be able to say, look, you did it this one time. We want you to do that again or do it multiple times or let us do it. And I think it's that the precedent that's being set is almost more important than just getting into this guy's phone.
Absolutely.
It's what does it allow the security agencies to argue in the future? What sort of kind of slippery slope are you starting on? And I think that's why Apple's, resisting as hard as it is.
It's a great conversation, but there's a lot of other things to talk about, so we are going to do that. But I thank Steve for dialing in and joining us and adding considerable force and weight to the conversation. And boy, I can't think of 3 better people to talk about it.
It's a great
subject.
Yeah, it means so many things are crystallized in this example.
Yeah, and I think putting myself in Tim Cook's shoes, I would do exactly what he did.
Yeah, okay. I don't think he has a choice. I don't think he has a choice.
All right.
No, I'm not. Here's one of the things I fear. We've come to the point now where we so mistrust government that we essentially want to throw the baby out with the bathwater. We can't trust government, so we just forget it. And we have survived 250 years on the rule of law and on the Constitution, and those are very precious things. But
they got that way by people pushing.
Absolutely.
Right? I mean, it has to be a debate.
The debate does not stop. It is not written in stone. It's not. It's going to evolve. But ultimately, we didn't have a coup in this country when the Supreme Court in 2000 ruled that George Bush won the election.
One might argue it was a coup, but that's another story.
But it was a coup by the Supreme Court.
Yes.
Right.
And because we have all agreed as a society that that's how it should be, the risk is if you start saying, well, I don't care, as technologists, we have the right to encrypt, and we're going to do it whether the Supreme Court says so or not, of destroying something far more important, which is the rule of law and the national polity. And we need that, I think, or we will descend into,
and I totally agree. But there has to be a process where, so if a security agency says, we need into this guy's phone and you don't need to know why, we got an order from the secret court.
That's wrong.
I think there needs to be a little bit more due diligence of that need.
Yeah, I agree. I would say 3 things. One, that we have to look upon this as a level of principles, no matter what the present technology is, and what the president said. 2, we have to look at this internationally, because we have to recognize what's being done. And 3, we have to do it transparently, and that's why I'm glad that Cook did what he was doing.
Yeah. This, believe me, if I didn't think this was an important conversation, I wouldn't have just devoted an hour and a half to it.
Jesus, really?
Well, an hour anyway. It's very important, and it's probably the most important as I said at the beginning, the most important story in technology of the year, and maybe of all the year. But and I think there's many words that will be spoken over this, and I don't know if there's a clear answer, but I would argue that just as you quite correctly say, encryption is vital for security and privacy for its citizens. I would also say that there's a reason we have rule of law, because lacking that, you have anarchy, and that is even more dangerous to all citizens. Let's see. You said you had breaking news. There's so many things it could be. Let me just give you some of.
Right now.
You know what? Let me just give you some of the things that could be breaking news. Yahoo, more layoffs.
Something else in there.
Yeah.
Yes.
Twitter, the new GIF button. Google has launched a new service, Gmailify, to give you Gmail-like capabilities in your inbox, no matter who you use. Mm-hmm. And Facebook announces anyone can use instant articles starting April 12th. Is it one of those?
A couple of those. Yep.
There's a lot of news.
Actually, I wrote about Giphy today. Giphy.
I love Giphy. Or is it Jiffy?
They pronounce it Giphy because otherwise Jiffy is a peanut butter. So
okay, I guess in this case it's Giphy. Giphy and Rifsy. We say it Rifsy,
and
right?
Rifsy, right. So they're the ones behind the GIF button.
We'll talk about that momentarily.
Okay.
This is a
and one more thing. Somehow Anantech got new software, the Pixel C, that makes it better. We'll talk about that.
And I'll tell you about my dead Pixel C.
Oh no.
We'll talk
but
about
you got
it.
Another
it's going
one,
to be a happy ending. It's going to be a happy ending.
Has a happy ending?
It will. In a few days.
God damn it, I love that show. It's so much fun to talk about this stuff with smart people. And I'm sorry I swore. You can bleep that out, right, Jason? We have technology.
Oh, that's not a swear.
Oh, it is.
Did you swear? I didn't even notice.
You did.
You atheists.
Sorry.
Our show today... I'm sorry, I really am. I'm going straight to HE double hockey sticks. Our show today brought to you by FreshBooks, the super simple cloud accounting software that's giving thousands of freelancers and small businesses the tools they need to save time billing, to get paid faster. And I am a believer because, believe me, I used FreshBooks. When they first started, it was like the clouds parted and the heavens began to sing, because I was that freelancer who every month, at the end of the month, had to get all the receipts together, get fire up the Microsoft Excel and create an invoice, send it up, stamp it, and mail it. I was complaining about it to Amber MacArthur, because I had to bill Canada in Canadian dollars, no less, every month for my expenses and my time. And Amber said, "Would you stop complaining and go to FreshBooks?" I said, "What's FreshBooks?" She showed me. They had just launched. This was like 2004. In the intervening few years, they have grown and gotten better and better. I did all my invoices with FreshBooks. They look great. I could mail them, but I also could email them. And you know what? I got paid faster, not only because I invoiced on time. That was a big part. It was easy to do. But because there's a pay me button right there in the invoice, in the email, and clients will pay you if you make it easy for them, turns out, right away. And if they don't, FreshBooks follows up automatically. Plus, all those receipts I had in the shoebox, now I can just take a picture of them with my smartphone. They didn't have this capability back in 2004. I didn't have a smartphone. I could take a picture. The FreshBooks app will automatically get that receipt into the invoice, time and hours too. And now they have a new card reader. This is really sweet. Man, I didn't even dream of this in 2004. For people who work, in your home, for instance, a hi-fi installer, a plumber, they come to your home with the FreshBooks app. They can create an estimate, get your approval, show it to you on the phone or email it to you, get your approval on the phone, do the work, make an invoice, like right there on the spot, get your approval, and then you can swipe your card in their new card reader. It's EMV enabled, so they can dip the chip too, and you get paid then. Oh my goodness. This is the new iPhone app. It's spectacular. Send an estimate right after the handshake. Create an invoice and send it in seconds from your phone. Track billable time anywhere you are. Track expenses with the camera. This is sweet. And it's yours free for the next 30 days when you go to freshbooks.com/twig. And don't forget to tell them you heard about it on This Week in Google. freshbooks.com/twig. Start your 30-day free trial right now. You will thank me. I promise. I thanked Amber. I thank her still.
Leo, I think when you started using it, Mike McDermott was still running it out of his parents' basement.
Don't tell me that. It's in Toronto, so you know these guys.
Yeah. Yeah, Mike and I are old friends.
Oh, I love it. You know what? Was it really out of his parents' basement?
Yeah.
It was.
For years.
Really?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So we talked about it like as one of the first Web 2.0. This is how old it is. Web 2.0 websites. It was beautiful.
And he started it because he was in Ultimate. He was playing Ultimate.
How funny.
Frisbee, and he was doing events for the team, and he wanted a way to bill, and he found all the existing ways so frustrating that he decided to create his own.
This is the team now, and they are a good-looking bunch, including that guy in the Blue Jays jersey there. Mm-hmm. Is Mike in this picture?
Is he?
I'm looking for him. They've moved? It's not his parents' basement, unless his parents live in a fairly large building.
I think they've moved 3 or 4 times now.
They've grown.
Last time I saw him, I said, "Are you moving again?"
So proud of, you should be proud of him. I'm so thrilled with what they've done.
That's a great company.
It is. Freshbooks.com. Well, that's nice. Maybe we've talked about that before. That's really cool. So Brandon Chester wrote a somewhat scathing review of the Pixel C, and I think he was not alone. Many of us who bought the Google tablet just kind of felt like the hardware was really great, but that the Android version that came on it, 6.01 or whatever it was, just wasn't all there. In fact, it was a little bit buggy, slow. So that's kind of what Brandon said. He reached out to Google, and Google gave him an update. He was offered, he says, the chance to test a new unit that would run a new unreleased build containing fixes Google plans to release to the public in the future. Given the fact that Pixel C has solid hardware that's only let down by buggy software, the chance to see their improvements was welcome. So he goes through it. He says, it's better. Still not perfect. I still am hoping for Chrome OS on the thing. I really love the hardware. Yeah.
I'm hoping for any OS.
What happened? Oh man!
Did you drop it?
No, it's look at the
Android's dead.
The Android
has a little red triangle coming out of its tummy.
God bless Google. I went through a few diagnostics. I called them up and I said it's gotten worse and worse and worse. As before this went fully dead, and no argument, no complaint. Send me the keyboard's broken too. They're sending me both immediately right away. And no, folks, it's not because it's me. I just called the number and I'm just some guy with the device. The Twitter complaint, they jumped on it maybe because it's me, but not the phone. They were great. Remember when I was on the show from a hotel and the thing went kaflooey?
Yep. Brandon says this too, by the way, that random crashes.
I couldn't restart it. I finally got it to restart.
Happened again.
I was nervous about it ever since. And then like a week ago, it started doing it where it would just crash, or I couldn't get it going, or going on its own. It would take many attempts to get it started. I finally get it started, but for God's sakes. So then I rebuilt it, and it got worse quickly. And in fact, I was starting it one last time so I could erase, I could clear the machine. Then I can't get to it. To clear it before I said it. It's going to be okay. Google will erase it if there's any data on there, right?
Yes, of course.
Sure, they will.
They'll hand it right over to the NSA.
Until the FBI gets it first.
By the way, that is encrypted. All of Google's Nexus devices are encrypted out of the box.
Encrypted by default.
By default. You can turn it off, but they are encrypted by default. In fact, with the Nexus 6, the Shamu, the big one, people really complained because it slowed down disk performance considerably because I guess there wasn't hardware support.
So
is there a reason why the Pixel C doesn't have Chrome OS on it? Like why?
Well, we heard that story, right? And I don't know how true it is that it was designed for Chrome OS, or actually not exactly Chrome OS, a hybrid OS that Google was developing and killed at the last minute. And
there's some kind of turf war between Android and
it sounds like when Andy Rubin left.
Here's the issue, Matthew. Here's the issue, and I'm trying to get my head around this because it is, I'm in a middle ground, right? I've got my 6, my 7, my 9-inch, my Chromebook. If the Pixel C were a Chromebook, it would be a laptop substitute. What it wouldn't be though, what I use it for is I'm on the plane, I'm watching movies. The downloading onto Chrome OS does not work well. I have not gotten to work yet at all.
Oh, interesting.
No, that's a good point.
It's just not as good at that. So those things that you want to run apps for,
right?
That's what Android is good at.
Okay, that makes sense.
But as a laptop and a productivity device and getting full value out of the software, including there's all kinds of things that Docs doesn't do on it, it sucks. So it's stuck in a bad middle ground. And this is where he's right. It's a less than optimal Android device and it would be a less than optimal Chrome device or desktop device or laptop substitute. So they do need to figure out how to get the two OSs together.
Yeah,
and just
it feels to me like
go through these functions and say what function should it do well. Let's make it do it well.
And what if Chrome OS had better downloading built in?
Well, let me tell you, this is the story according to Ron Amadio. And this is actually, and while I'm telling this story, Jeff, unplug and replug your headset because we're getting some weird effects on there. Back in 2014, July 2014, a new Ryu board, motherboard, was popping up in the Chrome OS open source repository. Further trips through the source code revealed that Ryu had a light bar, like the Pixel C, USB Type-C connectors, like the Pixel C, and NVIDIA Tegra SoC. Pixel C has the X1, yeah. And wireless charging. And in fact, you see in the source code on the Pixel C, the product name Ryu. So this was going to be the launch hardware, according to Ron, for an all-new, all-touch version of Chrome OS, which at some point got canceled. And it's a really great story if you read through this. And Ron's done some good reporting, I think, on this. The Chrome OS was working on a new interface called Project Athena, which added a lot of functionality based on touchscreen usage. It's right about the same time, July 2014. that we started to see references to the Pixel C, Project Ryu. The biggest addition we knew about, says Ron, was an experimental window switcher, which would have taken Chrome OS's Windows management UI from a taskbar interface to a cascading, scrolling thumbnail UI that looks a lot like you see in Marshmallow. They added swipe gestures. I don't know if they would have added the media features you are looking for, but Project Athena never shipped. In December 2014, the project was canceled. So, with no touch interface to run on the 10-inch touchscreen, no mouse to drive the mouse-centric Chrome OS, the Pixel C was in a pickle. So for a while, they considered dual booting Android and Chrome OS. But that idea only lasted about 5 months. In July 2015, the dual boot project seems to have been scrapped. A comment on a Ryu commit mentioned the cancellation while giving us more evidence. It's so great that you can go back through Git commits and look at the comments and learn so much. The comment said, abandoned. Frankenboard is dead. Frankenboard.
And some geeks went out for beers.
Yeah, well, they came up with Plan C. We got it. Let's ship it. In September, just a couple months later at the Nexus launch event, they announced the Android 6 powered Pixel C. Remember what a shock that was? And he was showing the keyboard thing. This was just 2 months after Frankenboard was killed. And then, as you remember, they didn't announce the ship date, but all of a sudden, December 8th, everybody says, oh, it's for sale. And you bought it, and I bought it. We all rushed out and bought one.
And as a... I keep on so I love, and I still love, and I feel disloyal to my 7-inch, right?
Yeah, the Nexus 7.
The Nexus 7 is beautiful. It's not sold anymore. It's the right size for a pocket. It's the right size for me sitting on the subway. The problem with the Pixel C is it's so big to hold it on a subway or a train or something. And again, it's a bad laptop substitute. It's a too big tablet, but
I love it.
The screen is gorgeous.
And I feel like I'm really relieved to hear that Google's working on it. Like they're not going to abandon it.
Yeah. And so, the fixes aren't enough yet. They fix some of the obvious things that are there, the low-hanging bad fruit. Fine. There's something there. There's some day in which, when I'm traveling around the world, I want to take that as the only device. It'll be lighter. It'll be good on the plane. It'll be good. But they've got to fix. They've got to fix the productivity uses, because they put the keyboard in there in a way that you're now going to expect to use docks really well, and it doesn't do docks well. And you've got to expect that it's not going to make apps really awkwardly huge. And they've got to work on other things as well. But you can start to see this future, but they've got to care about this stuff.
Yeah. We're going to call you back, Jeff, because it came back, didn't solve the problem.
Sorry.
That's okay. While Matthew and I talk about Jiffy and Riffsy. So this, I love, I use Facebook Messenger. I use Telegram. Both have GIF buttons.
You use Telegram?
Yeah, I love Telegram.
Interesting.
I wish other people used it, but since I'm the only one, it's kind of boring. It's not a great experience, but it's fun because you can type. Messenger does this too. You hit the GIF button and then you type a word, and it will find matching animated.
Do you use
GIFs.
Slack at all?
Slack, same thing.
So Slack, their Giphy integration is fantastic. We use Slack at Fortune, and we use it at GigHome, and using the right GIF, is a great feeling. I have to confess that I actually thought, because I'm an old person and words are my thing, I thought GIFs were kind of dumb and sort of infantile.
No, actually, it's old people that love GIFs.
Yeah, well, no, they do. But I think people actually like them because they can be very effective. They can trigger.
I agree.
Whether it's a laugh or a smile or it's like a teeny tiny movie. It's like a little. And so I actually have kind of come around to them in a way. I felt the same way about emojis. I thought they were dumb and that kids used them and they were dumbing down the population or so on. But there are ways you can communicate visually through things like a GIF or an emoji that are different than you could either type 1,000 words to try to describe something, or you could just,
I agree.
Use a clip of Donald Trump looking like an idiot. And so it is very powerful.
There was this evolution, and Telegram really did it, where we went from emoticons, right, semicolon dash right paren, to emoji, which basically had really the kind of the same weight as emoticons, except they were easier to figure out in a bigger variety, but they were still tiny. And then stickers. We went through this sticker phase.
And Facebook likes stickers.
Yeah.
Because they want to basically take over emojis and have their own.
There's a revenue model in stickers, and Telegram uses them too. And you can, Telegram's great because I have a whole set of Donald Trump stickers. And the thing that Telegram did that I love is that Telegram tied its stickers to the emoji. So what you do is you type the thumbs up emoji, but you say, but I want a sticker. And then you can get the Donald doing a thumbs up. Or I mean, it's so cool. This is actually probably the most sophisticated use of this.
You know, today my brilliant colleague, Professor Kerry Brown, talked to all of the main journalism professors today about how to judge social media and that kind of stuff. I just imagine them all watching the conversation you two just had after the last 3 minutes. Their heads are going to explode.
I know.
Well, welcome to the new. So look, I've typed.
And I was there too. I was there too.
Well, but it's exactly right. It's much more nuanced than text.
Yeah.
And it's fun. So you can show the lower part of, you can show the screen. I don't think there's anything wrong with this, Jason. So I typed a thumbs up emoji, and then it's offering me, because I have a lot of sticker sets, it's offering me George Costanza, Fallout 4.
Nice.
But I think I'll use the the Trump. I mean, so you could do a heart, and then you get all the, if there are stickers that correspond to hearts, which there aren't.
You bought the stickers?
No. This is a nice thing about Telegram. Everything's free.
Right, but you said there's a business model in stickers.
But there is for Facebook.
For Facebook, yeah.
And for others, including, and this is where the story is leading, perhaps Twitter. Look, I can also do Taylor Swift thumbs up. That's a Swiftie.
Twitter's a great example. When it first implemented autoplay animated GIFs, I thought, this is terrible. Yeah. This is going to ruin Twitter.
Yeah.
So, and I was very vocal about how, and Vine autoplay and all those other things. And I was completely wrong, because some days the GIFs that I see that people post,
they're so great,
are the most enjoyable point of my day.
Yeah.
And maybe that says a lot about my day.
No, but it's true.
But after Jeb Bush posted that photo of his gun or whatever and said America, the animated GIFs I saw after that, 15 or 20 of them, were hysterical. And so you got more.
Well, look, now compare it to, so now, and this is why I agree with you. So this is now Messenger, and this started, I think, really with an Apple keyboard for Giphy, because now I've typed thumbs up as the search, so I can get a rather large, and isn't that better than the emoticons? And many of them are very topical, right?
Yeah.
And so
I think Rifsy has a keyboard.
Yeah, I think Rifsy and Jiffy both came from third-party at least the first time I saw them, third-party keyboards on iOS. There you go. There's my thumbs up.
There's actually there's a Twitter account that I just came across called @/GIF.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure who does it, but if you mention @/GIF and then you put a word in, it will just randomly reply to you with a GIF. So it will just randomly choose. So if you post love or Trump or thumbs, it will just pick one randomly.
Is it just GIF is the Twitter handle?
/GIF. So
SLASH?
Yeah.
Yeah.
GIF.
Yeah, because you can't use there it is, /GIF. I find GIFs for you. Tweet a search term. Oh, nice. Nice.
So you just mention @/GIF and the term, and it responds to you with whatever it comes up with.
Oh, I'm going to follow this fella.
Quite fun. It's quite fun.
So what is Twitter? So Twitter's institutionalizing this, as every text-based messaging platform should.
And it's interesting, when I mentioned this in the post I did about Giphy, my sort of, the reluctance to see GIFs as a, not just my reluctance, but people's reluctance in general to see them as something more than just a time-wasting, goofy thing. And the COO of Giphy made the point that it's not just cat GIFs or, funny things. It can be lots of other things. It can convey strong emotion. It can be a highlight from a sports game. It can be a score from a game. It can be a weather report. On Slack, you can actually slash Giphy and put in your area code, and it'll show you the weather. I mean, there's a lot more that can kind of be conveyed in a GIF, in a short animated GIF than you would think.
So I tweeted /GIF thumbs up, and this is what I got. You got it, dude. Which is
That's a good one.
Jimmy Fallon as Donald Trump. So it really combines everything into one.
That's a good one.
Yeah. So what do you think, Jeff? Is this a crazy? I think this is great.
No, I think all I was going to say, I see GIFs, everything can be gamed and everything can be spammed. And I see a lot of GIF spam now.
Really?
Yeah.
What?
What does it look like?
Well, so not always animated, but somewhere there's a service that took some quote that I did, like "do what you do best and leave for the rest," and made it into a GIF, right? And now I see that thing coming across with my @name all the time, and the reason is it's fake spam accounts trying to look real by doing those GIFs.
Okay.
And so it's kind of the only reason they exist. So anything and everything can be both spammed and gamed.
True.
And that's what that was. So to put that aside, I think Matthew, the things you just said about how it can be used to convey news. If you look at the new Quartz app, which unfortunately is only iOS, it's doing news as a text conversation. And you want more? Then here's more. You don't want any more? Then go to the next thing. Which is really interesting. Now imagine using graphic. We used to call them graphics, call them GIFs, call them whatever you want. That, as you say, can convey the Dow, or can convey weather, or can convey a moment of news, or the moment when Jeb Bush walked by Carson going to the debate, or whatever. You can convey a lot in that, and so I used to make fun of dancing GIFs and decry them too, and there are a lot of them deserve being decried.
Sure.
But yes, they can still do a lot.
Well, and I remember I keep coming back to whenever something like GIFs comes up, I come back to what I thought of when Twitter first showed up, which was that it was the dumbest thing I'd ever seen, and that no one in their right mind would ever use it for anything. Clearly a little wrong. And I'm reminded, even Alexander Graham Bell didn't know what the hell people were going to do with the telephone. Just thought it was a good idea.
He didn't even know how people were going to answer it. He said everybody should say ahoy hoy.
Ahoy. Ahoy was his favorite. Yeah.
So what does being GIFified do anything to save Twitter?
No, it's just one more feature.
No, not at all. Not at all. But it is interesting that they, by building it in, they're taking advantage of it, but they're also effectively giving the network over to it.
It's interesting too, because it's a step away from the kind of very basic text-focused
which was my
ethos
problem
that
with
was
it.
originally Twitter, right?
And my problem with it was I just want to see 140 characters from somebody, and then we got screenshots and screen captures of things, and then Vine videos autoplayed, and then GIFs autoplayed, and I thought, it's just becoming more like Facebook. I have to say though, I actually find it more enjoyable. So again, I was totally wrong.
And lest you think this all dumb and dopey, Rifsy has just raised a considerable amount of money. $55 million, $55 million, giving it a $300 million valuation
with no revenue.
Yeah, so I mentioned on Twitter that a maker of animated GIFs was worth more than the Washington Post, which obviously people don't like to think about, particularly people who probably work at the Washington Post. But in a way, they are both. So the point I was trying to make in the Post, and that the COO was making, is Giphy is a media company. You may not like the format that the media is in, but this thing is integrated into so many different things. It's reaching billions of people, theoretically. It's got partnerships with every conceivable platform, from Facebook to Slack to Twitter to Tinder. It's got partnerships with movie companies and record labels. It's not just a website where you go to find a funny cat GIF. Effectively is a media company.
Of course, the revenue model is actually pretty straightforward. When a movie comes out, you all of a sudden you start seeing offered to you Hail Caesar GIFs, for instance, and then everybody goes, oh yeah, and that's worth a lot of money, as Snapchat has shown us. This is not the only addition. Following the addition of a GIF button, Twitter is now bringing video support to direct messages. in iOS and Android, or on Twitter.com.
Yeah, I'm going to have to turn off the all DMs, accept all DMs, because if I start getting videos,
I turn that off.
Auto-playing in my DMs.
Yeah, I never turn that on. I only want DMs from people I follow. It's insane to say anybody can DM me.
I turned it on for a while, and it was kind of fun.
It becomes email at that point, right?
Yeah, and nobody wants
So is
that.
the Twitter GIF button rolled out?
Not yet.
Yeah.
And is it? And here's my other question: is it, as always, are they going to do it only on Twitter.com and not on TweetDeck, which they own?
Oh, they've abandoned TweetDeck.
Oh.
Where is it? It's not. It's rolling out slowly. I mean, it's rolling out today,
Yeah,
but it's not. I don't have it
is
yet.
rolling
For
out today.
instance.
I don't have it either.
Yeah.
It probably
I
won't be
never,
on Twitter.
ever use Twitter.com. Never.
Oh, I do for that very reason, because you want the full Twitter experience.
Well, they also
normals-
ruined retweets.
Normals use
Commenting
it.
on a retweet. It's just.
But how do you feel about the what you missed thing? I kind of I guess
you were
that's
away?
while you're away. I guess that's algorithmic, but I like it.
Yeah, it's okay as long
It
as
works.
that doesn't take over the feed.
Yeah, so I wrote a whole thing about it because it feels like a slippery slope to me. So that while you're away is fine. I have no problem with it. Lots of people have no problem with it. And it is an option, but eventually it will become the default. And so then you'll have to turn it off. And then eventually it will become more while you were away and less what it used to be. And you probably won't notice because it's the default. And so lots of people will never turn it off. And eventually we will, I mean, Facebook did exactly the same thing. It was an option and then it became the default. And then turning it off became almost impossible. And then they hid the way to turn it off. And now when you do turn it off, they turn it back on. And you have to keep turning it off. And so no one does it. And so, huge proportion of people aren't even aware that their feed is being filtered. That concerns me.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think that while you were away is actually a nice kind of intermediate step that it gives you a little bit of a best of both.
It's not going to stop there. It's not going to stop there because they need to boost their engagement.
Right.
That's the whole reason they're doing it in the first place.
Right.
So in order to boost engagement, they will just keep tweaking it and turning up the volume on the algorithm. And then it'll be the default.
Google has launched something called Gmailify. I'm really thinking this is a good idea. A way to use Google's best features with non-Gmail accounts. So, for instance, I guess you would be giving Google access to your Yahoo Mail, your Outlook mailbox, so they could scan it, do anti-spam.
Google's reading your email.
And we like it. Inbox organization, you'd get Google Now benefits because it would be reading your mail.
It's a good idea.
I think it's a great idea. And you don't have to use it.
Yep.
I'll have to try it on my, there'll be a good test on the Outlook.com account because if it actually does get the spam, there will be nothing in the mailbox. Same with Yahoo, right?
That was actually the first, when I switched, I was using Outlook, of course, because where I worked required it. And the thing that really sold me on Gmail was the anti-spam.
Yeah.
It was just so flawless and so fast. And Outlook was just the worst.
So it's in, you have to sign in, enable, I don't understand how it works exactly. There's a blog post, but so starting today, if you use Yahoo or Hotmail or Outlook.com, all you need to do is open the Gmail app. Oh, I see. You do it in the Gmail app, and then the new Gmail app allows you to sign into those accounts. And then there's a
Okay.
get it, Gmailify. So it sounds like it doesn't actually modify. It won't like take all the spam out of my Yahoo Mail. I wish it would, but it does when I'm looking at it with the Gmail app.
Right.
I kind of step back from the Gmail app. I like Inbox so much, but it sounds like
I do too, actually.
Yeah,
I do too.
yeah. It's just you and me.
I used
apparently.
Mailbox for a little while.
Yeah,
Did you use Mailbox?
I've tried them all. I just started deleting from iOS all my alternate email programs, and I've yet to find one that just really works for me. One of the reasons is I need to have PGP or GPG in my case, open PGP in there for signing and encryption, and most email programs don't.
Yeah,
very few on mobile support it. I keep going back to Thunderbird with Enigmail, believe it or not. It's pretty darn good.
Thunderbird's great.
Yeah. and it's free.
Mm-hmm.
Tech editor-in-chief at Yahoo Tech, Dan Tynan, laid off also. And the hits just keep on coming. David Pogue is not leaving.
He's moving over to news. They're only doing 4 areas now.
Yeah, they folded it over.
They're shutting down some of their magazines.
Yeah.
It sounded like at first that they were going to shut down Yahoo Tech altogether, but it doesn't look that way.
Kara Swisher. According to sources close to the situation, Yahoo CEO Marissa Mayer has designated Wednesday as the day of the week to make the massive employee cuts.
Great.
Yay. So we're just going to do it every Wednesday.
It's cut day.
It's cut me day. Well, you don't want to fire somebody on Friday that can really put a damper on their weekend.
Right.
You file them on Monday, It's just an insult. Wednesday.
Maybe they could have a party for the people who are being laid off.
Sure.
Marissa could ride around on a Zamboni.
Yeah. Food is gone. Carrie Diamond out. She was editor. Parenting is gone. Travel.
Autos.
Oish.
See, I didn't even know
all areas that should have good advertising.
Yeah, who knew they had it?
Yeah.
I mean, I looked at the tech section a lot, and there was a lot of advertising in it. And they mixed in because it was tile based, and they mixed in advertising tiles with the content tiles, which is not my favorite way to do it.
They also kind of aggregated a lot. I mean,
yeah, a lot of it wasn't their stuff. Yeah.
If they were going to really devote time and resources to it, then they should have done it. Like really do it.
So I guess AMP has amped up the competition. Facebook's AMP competitor, Instant Articles, is going to be available to all publishers as of April 12th. Took them a year to do it.
Big deal.
Is it?
Yeah.
Yeah, I have argued
a pretty big deal.
Publishers that I'm reading a lot more Washington Post now. A lot more.
Because you see it in your Facebook feed.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it's fast.
And it's
very fast. It's a good experience.
So fast.
I have argued to many publishers they should really consider creating whole new media properties entirely on Facebook, because Instant Articles now adds monetization in there. And I'll tell you, I'm gonna go. I want to be able to put anything I write henceforth. I want to do it under as a long post, an article, so to speak. I want to put it in on Instant Articles. I'll make a cup of coffee a year, but I want to do that.
I'd like to go one step farther and ask Facebook to add an audio post format for kind of SoundCloud-like audio post.
I expect they will.
Yeah.
I expect they will.
Right now, WNYC, which does a lot of podcasts, is just putting a video with a static picture up, and because it's the problem is it doesn't autoplay audio.
Yeah.
So that's maybe less than desirable.
I'll be interested to see whether, I forget who brought this up in my Twitter feed, but somebody said, how long until someone, a sort of independent journalist, just goes full on Instant Articles? Just publishes everything through Instant Articles.
BuzzFeed and Vice, right? I mean, aren't they really deprecating their homepage and just saying, we'll be wherever you are, whether it's Snapchat or Facebook? Or
actually, Fast Company had a huge takeout piece on BuzzFeed that I wrote a post about, because it's fascinating how much that's a data-driven company. It's more than I can go into at the moment, but it's just fascinating how much data there is below the surface. But there was a stat in there, 75% or more of BuzzFeed, the content that BuzzFeed creates, never appears on their website. 75%.
Put it another way. What Jonah told me at a conference, I see it elsewhere, it was nothing secret, that BuzzFeed has 5 billion interactions with people a month. Only 1 billion of those interactions occur at BuzzFeed.com. And Jonah said to him now, BuzzFeed.com is his laboratory. The business is offsite. And media companies have to understand how they have to go to users and go to readers, whatever we want to call them, wherever they are. Now, the hard part of that is twofold. One, monetization, but both AMP and IA solve that. The second problem is, how do you build a relationship, which I argue has to be the future of media, if you're interacting with people all the hell over creation? And we've got to work on that. And the platforms have to help us be able to do that. But I think that there are ways that can be done.
And I think BuzzFeed's pitch, their monetization is their pitch to brands and advertisers is, we understand how content works on all these platforms.
Well, exactly. They don't sell media. They don't sell space. They don't sell audience. They sell a skill. And that skill is, we can make our crap viral. We can make your crap viral too.
And I think it's fascinating to me how much time they spend and how little time lots of traditional media companies spend on looking at what people actually do. So not just do they click, and not just do they come back to our website. What do they do after that? So the Fast Company article makes clear that clicking is not enough. That's not what BuzzFeed is interested in. Sharing is the most important thing. If
yeah, but even there, but
post
there,
gets shared,
Matthew,
that's the most important thing.
Yeah, but in that sense of selling that skill of viral, because you can sell that. But in the end, does that really actually lead to real reading? Chartbeat, as we know, has found clearly that people share and don't read. So it's not an indication that people have really read it. And so,
but that's sharing.
Mr. Journalist or Ms. Advertiser, just because they shared it doesn't mean crap in terms of value.
No, but sharing and not reading is better than not sharing and not reading.
I'm not so sure. I'm not so sure.
Well,
sharing and not reading doesn't indicate that they've read your precious story. Sharing and not reading doesn't mean they've absorbed your advertising message. No, I don't think that's. I think the what's waiting to be out there is that the bubble's going to burst on sharing, and say it's worthless. It was fun while it lasted. Okay, what's next?
I think you have to look at things beyond just the sharing. You have to look at you have to measure engagement, which is really, really hard to do.
That's the point, Matthew.
Right.
There's no engagement, no sharing.
All I'm saying is at least they're partway down the road to doing that. Lots of traditional media companies they don't even know the road is there or how to get there.
They're agreed.
Because they're not doing any of those things.
To me, there's levels here, right? Level one of metrics in our business is page views, reach, frequency. That's the old mass media business model. That's dead. Next is so-called engagement, time spent, sharing, likes. That's bubble to burst. The next one, to me, that's most important for the future of the business is relationships. How many people do you know? What do you know about them? What value can you bring them as a result? Then the fourth is in journalism is impact. And impact is really almost a brand question. The business basis is relationships. And we're really bad at that in our industry. We don't have relationships with people. We give them a one-size-fits-all product. We don't know who the hell you are. As I'm always fond of saying, Google knows where I live and where I work. My newspaper doesn't. That's a shame.
And I just wrote a whole post about the Guardian's membership approach as opposed to the sort of one-size-fits-all paywall approach. One is, here's a bunch of content we created. We have no idea whether you're interested in it or not, but you should probably pay us. And the other approach is trying to get to know your readers and figure out what it is they actually want. I think those are very, very different.
I held and full disclosure, I'm working with the Guardian on membership. And I had a small event with WBEZ Chicago and WNYC, WGBH, WFMU, and also the Guardian, and also, I think I mentioned this before to Leo, Jack Conte from Patreon. And Jack has really fascinating information. Now, Jack's just brilliant about when people want to support something, when they want to become a patron to something, and they support more than one thing, how that kind of generosity works. And so it's not about getting access to content. It's about being part of something and helping something. And we don't understand that in our business. Public media begins to understand it, but still in a media-centric way, not in a public-centric way.
Right. And in fact, most of the things you see membership-based plans offering are things like go behind the scenes and get a tour of the newsroom. Well, actually, no one is really interested in that at all. What about how can you help us?
Enough about you. Did you like me and my
story? Right, exactly.
Yep.
Let's see here.
So I just put up, I don't want to go back to the topic, but if you care, I didn't watch it yet, but Fox News says that if Apple wins, ISIS wins.
Okay.
I just thought that's enough. You don't have to show it.
Yeah. Did you see the Grammys? Did you watch Adele?
No.
She was kind of not sounding so good.
Well, she had technical problems, right?
Apparently the microphone fell into the piano,
strings,
which is interesting because Google's ad for the Grammys, in some interesting way, presaged this. This is their Be Together, Not the Same as 88 keys on a piano and a virtuoso can really make it sing. Each one is different. But what if all the keys were the same?
I've got to admit, I watched this the first time and I didn't get it.
Yeah, you have to read the captions.
I thought it's a weird composition, but what the hell?
I think it's interesting. If all the keys have the same note. I don't mind the second one. I just might be what Adele was singing to. I don't know.
It's kind of like a GIF.
Oh,
I actually
here they
followed
come.
the Grammys exclusively through Twitter.
You could too.
So I did not have it
real
on
time.
at all. And I feel like I sort of watched it.
Here's the.
I want to see Hamilton. Jeez, I want to see.
Oh,
Hamilton.
I know that makes you want to see it. I tell you.
Oh God.
I'm going to come out. We're going to scalp tickets, and we're all going to go. Let's just all go. Stephen Fry has quit Twitter.
Again.
Has he quit it before?
He has taken sabbaticals.
Love the British comedian. He's very tech savvy, but he just had it after critiques of his BAFTA Awards conversation about, I don't know. Anyway, who cares? The real interesting thing is, when is Kanye West going to quit Twitter?
Well, I hope he never quits.
He's kind of amusing.
Someone said they should put him on the board or something, or give him stock, because he's doing more for Twitter.
It's quite engaging.
Yeah.
West took to Twitter on Saturday to say, I write this to you, my brothers, while still $53 million in personal debt. Please pray we overcome. This is my true heart.
And he asked Mark for $1 billion.
And then he says, Mark Zuckerberg, invest $1 billion into Kanye West's ideas. After realizing he is the greatest living artist and greatest artist of all time. Thank you. I am Kanye. And then he follows it up with, Mark Zuckerberg, I know it's your birthday, but can you please call me by tomorrow?
There's a bunch we probably don't want to mention on the air because he swears, but some of them are hilarious.
He also said, Larry Page, I'm down for your help too.
I think it's performance art.
It could be performance art. It could be he's actually gone. I'm torn between performance art and he's actually gone insane. I think he might be having a psychotic. Yeah, it's an interesting turn of events.
You know who has quit Twitter is Mark Andreessen.
What?
Well, he hasn't said he quit. He last tweeted on February 10th.
What?
That was a week ago.
This after considering, according to sources, a purchase of Twitter with Silver Lake. And, of course, he invented the tweet storm. Mark Andreessen, one of the writers of the original Mosaic browser, one of the guys
but you know why
behind Netscape.
So he tweeted about India.
Yeah, we talked about
So
he did go
that
over.
was his last tweet was a series of apologies for that.
Oh, that could.
Which is really too bad.
It is too bad. That guy's following him was.
He's amazing.
I still wish he was writing blog posts because those were amazing, but his Twitter account was fantastic. Like even if you could question that specific tweet.
Well, it was a very good example of what we talked about, which is it's way too easy to just write something offhand on Twitter. Right. And unfortunately, because it's written and because a lot of people see it, it becomes
so short.
As if you wrote an essay and treated it as if it was a carefully thought out pronouncement. It clearly wasn't. I mean, and Mark really abjectly apologized, as he should, because I can't remember what he said, but it was not very nice.
It was a reference to colonialism.
And it wasn't all that bad, right?
But that's kind of a third rail in India, obviously, for obvious reasons.
Yeah. And it has to do with the internet.org and Facebook's attempt to give free basics, give free internet to India. Indian government has rejected it, saying it's anti-net neutrality. It's 0 rating. Om Malik has been very forthright about that. And, of course, Om has standing to talk about this subject, being from India. He says
it is a fascinating...
It's a form of colonialism. He says they say when the British East India Company came, they gave a lot of free stuff away and then
they did
colonized.
Yeah, and I mean, I don't have any standing to talk about it because I'm not Indian, and I don't, I get Facebook the same way I get everything else. I've got lots of internet, and I have money, and I'm white, and so on. But the thing that fascinates me about the topic is so Mark Zuckerberg, he doesn't want to take over India, obviously, except in financial terms, maybe. I genuinely think he wants to give people free internet, but because of the history and the culture and the way that Facebook approached it, and I would argue they made a mistake in the way they sort of marketed it and the way I don't think they tried hard enough to understand the country before they came in and said, "Hi, we're Facebook, and we're going to give you a dumbed down version of the internet." It's just a fascinating story to me, the whole thing.
Mark's comment was, anti-colonialism has been economically catastrophic for the Indian people for decades. Why stop now? The kind of offhand comment that people might say in public and deeply regret moments later. The problem is...
Well, it was worse because he's a director of Facebook. And as I said last week, I suspect that I would bet you anything that Andreessen called Zuck and said, "Shoot me at dawn. I messed up, and then hold off Twitter for a while. But I do hope he comes back."
And we now have, as of 1 minute ago, a response from Sundar Pichai at Google to the Apple logo.
Okay.
This is a tweet storm, a 5-tweet post on Twitter. Why blog when you can tweet? Starting with, important post by Tim Cook forcing companies to enable hacking could compromise users' privacy. Tweet 2, we know that law enforcement and intelligence agencies face significant challenges in protecting the public against crime and terrorism. Tweet 3, we build secure products, we being Google obviously, build secure products to keep your information safe, and we give law enforcement access to data based on valid legal orders but that's wholly different than requiring companies to enable hacking of customer devices and data. Could be a troubling precedent. 5, looking forward to a thoughtful and open discussion on this important issue. A balanced and nuanced response from Sundar
and smart.
And smart.
Yeah.
So Edward Snowden, it may have taken them 5 hours, but he did it.
So did he write that before Snowden's tweet?
It just came out 3 minutes ago.
Just came out. Snowden 3 hours ago now, I think, did his...
It's amazing. It's really kind of amazing that this is where the conversation happens, is on Twitter in
that's what makes
5
it so
individual 140-character posts.
Well, and if you think about it, I actually, when Mark Andreessen and the India thing happened, I thought, if you had tried to describe to someone 10 years ago, Mark Andreessen's going to post a tweet, and then India's going to get upset, and Mark Zuckerberg is going to have to make a public statement on this thing called Facebook. Like, no one would have understood what you were talking about.
Yeah, you'd be speaking a foreign language.
A tweet.
A tweet? Well, it's a
really
small
incident.
blog post. Really tiny blog post. All right, let's take a break. Picks of the week, and we'll wrap this thing up in just a bit. But first, a word from our friends at Squarespace, the place to make your next website, whether you're a blogger, a business person, a restaurateur, a band, a photographer. Squarespace sites are gorgeous. They reflect your aesthetic. They reflect even the shopping cart looks like your site. So it's just a wonderful experience and very easy. You don't have to be a guru of the web because Squarespace has picked the best designers and the best engineers to design their templates. Now remember, Squarespace is hosting plus software, tightly integrated to give you the best possible experiences. The best hosting I know never goes down. The sites are gorgeous. And here's the beauty part. If you're a developer, the sky's the limit. It is incredible. Mobile's built in, from responsive designs to a mobile optimized checkout. You get all of this just, check boxes, drag and drop, and then click the developer button, and all of a sudden you can use Git and SFTP and customize to your heart's content. I mean, this is the most powerful platform I know. It is incredible. You still get a free domain with the annual purchase. Your site will look like it's designed by a professional because it is. Incredible 24/7 customer support. I tell you, when I moved my blog to Squarespace, I thought, why did I wait so darn long? Stop waiting and do it. You can try it free right now. Go to squarespace.com, and if you decide to buy, all I ask, use the offer code TWIG. You'll get 10% off your new account. Squarespace.com. Don't forget that offer code. TWIG. Any tips, picks, anything people want to share with us before we wrap this up? You got a number for us, Jeff?
Sure. And I can't resist the straight line of this because I'm not a huge TED fan. You know, any problem can be solved. It's like a sitcom. Any problem can be solved in 22 minutes. Any problem can be solved in an 18-minute TED Talk.
Yeah.
And so, however, David Kenny, who's now the head of IBM Watson, he sold Weather Channel to IBM. Fascinating guy, huge, brilliant guy in media. He just announced with Peter Diamandis an X Prize around Watson and artificial intelligence. So that's the good part. $4.5 million purse, a total $5 million competition. This is great. But the thing that gives me the giggles is that the winners are going to present TED Talks. So you think that TED Talks are made by algorithms? I thought they already were. They all sound alike.
Oh, that's
they have
interesting.
a formula. Having gotten my giggles out of me, I do think it's interesting that now we're going to see what happens with AI or human AI combos. They say to get this money on the TED stage, and then the people in TED in the audience who will fawn over anything, will vote on the winner to get this.
Wow.
So that's interesting, I thought.
Did you read John Markoff's great New York Times article about the Watson voice and how I guess it's from a book that he's done on computer personalities, but it was fun to hear the samples of the different voices, including one that was a childlike voice. People said that's way too creepy.
Yeah.
I know everything, and I'm 4 years old.
Hey, it's so great to have you, Matthew. You have anything you want to share with us, or should we just roll on out of here?
We can roll on out. I wanted to mention to people just quickly, if you have a device you want to try a news app, Jeff mentioned it, the Quartz app.
Oh, isn't that wild? I wish it were on Android. It's only iOS.
Same here.
But it will be. There's no
style.
technical reason why they couldn't have done it on both platforms.
No.
It's just you're talking with a bot.
And I think it's actually not a bot. It's their editors, but it simulates a conversation. So it's not a real conversation. Right. I think it'll be even more interesting when it becomes a real conversation and it's embedded in a messaging service like, say, Messenger or Slack. Right. And those are automated, I think.
There's a lot of personality in it. I think you're right, though. It's obviously editorial. It's an interesting choice.
Imagine if there was a bot, a Quartz bot or whatever in your messaging tool, and this is coming, and you can just say, hey, what's happening today? And the bot would say, well, what are you interested in? Do you want to know about world news? And so you start having a conversation.
Right. Or with your Amazon Echo, maybe.
Yeah, exactly.
I suspect that's why they only put it out on iOS. They're just gathering data because that's not the end game. The end game is exactly as you say, is a real bot. Yeah. So why bother developing it for a lot of platforms? You just need to get some information and to see how people like it and tailor it a little bit, and then you could put it out as it really is, which is as a bot. I want it on my Amazon Echo. I bought 2 more.
Oh, really?
Oh, I have 4 now.
I want it on the show, Leo. I want it on the desk.
I got one for here.
Oh, good. Okay.
Yeah, one's going to sit on this desk because we talk about it so much.
We want to ask it questions. Sorry, chat room, you're being replaced. We can now ask our questions
by a black tube.
Or leopard skin wrapped, if you'd like.
I might get the leopard skin wrap for the studio.
I don't know.
No. Matt, it's so great to have you. Mathew Ingram from, of course, Fortune.com, where he is a senior editor and one of the really just the best guys writing now on technology. Love reading your stuff. Thank you. I always love it when you're on the show. Thank you for being here on this.
Thanks for having me.
Pretty important episode.
Yeah.
He's Matthew I on the Twitter.
1T. I had to learn that the hard way. 1T.
So
couldn't afford any more T's.
The second T's redundant
in the game.
Yeah.
Yeah, I only need one.
What T is all you need? I only got 1 L. Jeff Jarvis, he's got 2 F's for reasons no one understands. You'll find him on, you don't really want to give out the Google Plus address still, do you?
No, I don't. We got to change
Let's take those off the lower thirds and make them Twitter now.
You know, my blog, I haven't been doing. I've got a cross post on the blog. It's a.
Yeah. I told you that Medium thing would be bad for you.
Go instant articles.
Instant articles. I think we should all just use Facebook and give up.
Mm-hmm.
Yep, it's over.
I for one welcome our new master.
Yeah. Mark, give me $1 billion. Worth a try. Thank you for joining us. We do This Week in Google every Wednesday afternoon, 1:30 Pacific, 4:30 Eastern Time, 21:30 UTC. Watch live. You can be in the chat room, but you don't have to because we make audio and video of the show available on demand after the fact at twit.tv/twig or wherever you subscribe to your favorite shows, because you know what? We're on all the platforms, everywhere, including Roku, 5 apps, count them, 5 on the Apple TV, even on iOS, Android, and Windows Phone. And, of course, there's plenty of podcast apps out there. All of them have it. So subscribe, because we want you to come back. And we thank you for joining us. And we'll see you next week on Google. Bye-bye.